It's time for Bringing the Heat with Bryan Nolen.
What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? It is another edition of Bringing the Heat with Bryan Nolen. Yours truly here on this week's edition of the program. Cam Waters, hello, mate. He's going to be joining the program. We'll be talking with my man, Trey Lyle, as they dove into a good old chat before the truck race at Kansas. He talked about a plethora of stuff, so highly recommend you stay tuned for that. And then a little bit later, my man Stephen Stumpf is going to recap everything regarding the news and the notes of this past weekend. Without further ado, let's dive on into the inferno with Trey Lyle.
Now it's time for
Cam Waters popped to the top on a 2-minute 3.5. A brilliant lap. The best we've seen this weekend. Congratulations, Cam Waters. That's one of the best laps of that young man's life. Sam Pollard there looking on. Rod Nash, Will Davison, Tim Edwards. That is one of the best laps ever for this young bloke. Cam Waters, well done, mate.
Man, I'm so pumped. That was absolutely awesome.
To Go Into the Inferno with Bryan.
What's up, everyone? Here with Cam Waters, of course, part of Thor Sport as well as Australian Supercars. Cam, thanks so much for doing this. My first question for you is, why make this leap to NASCAR now? Obviously, there's some V8 Supercar influence coming into the sport right now, but why make this leap now?
I've always kind of done ovals in Australia, so dirt ovals, and always followed NASCAR and found it obviously pretty interesting. And watched Marcos back in the day, and just wanted to give it a crack one day. So spoke to Ford, and they put us in touch with Thor Sport, and it was pretty cool to be able to put a couple of race deal together this year.
And you just touched on Marcos, obviously SVG. Probably two big names from V8 Supercar with their influence in NASCAR. Have you been able to talk to them throughout this process? Get any tips, maybe what they've seen?
100%. So when I come over here, spend a bit of time with Shane and ask him a heap of questions about what he's experiencing this year so far. And before I flew over, I called Marcos as well and got as many tips as I could. So they've been really good. And even straight after qualifying, I checked my phone and Shane's messaged me. So it's been cool. It's been very different. The two tracks, Martinsville was totally different to obviously this track being pretty well wide open, but loving the challenge.
Yeah, and for fans out there that maybe don't watch V8 Supercars and have watched the Truck Series, watched the Cup Series with Shane, what are the main differences between the vehicles that you've seen? Obviously, you're different, foot patterns and other things, but like the basic differences.
We got a little less horsepower, so we got 650, but our cars are a lot lighter. So our cars at home are probably a little bit more agile than I guess the truck. So that's probably the main thing is the power and the weight. The tires are a lot different. At Bathurst, we're still hauling pretty fast down those straights, but over the top of the mountain, our speeds are probably a little bit lower than say what we're doing here at Kansas. So there's some things that are pretty similar, and then there's some things that are just totally different.
Yeah, and you touched on it a little bit earlier, but you kind of go with the two wide ends of the spectrum in terms of the racing. You go Martinsville, heavy braking, and then obviously here you're going to be wide open throughout most of the race tonight. Talk about the choices of the tracks. Was it just kind of what fell to you? Is it the ones you seeked out?
It's the ones that kind of worked out with my calendar. Wanted to start on a short oval, so Martinsville worked pretty well with my calendar, so we picked that, and then we wanted to do it, a mile and a half, and it's just whatever kind of worked with my schedule. So pretty glad that we come here to Kansas for my first, bigger track, and we'll get through tonight, see how we go, and I'd love to kind of do a super speedway as well, but you got nothing planned after this.
You might be in the minority of drivers I've heard say wanting to do super speedways, but any future plans past this race, or are you just taking it kind of race by race?
No, nothing after this one. So we had the two races kind of half planned, and had to get through Martinsville before we could get here, and awesome to be able to get here and do this race. But after that, there's nothing really planned. So we'll regroup after this weekend. Hopefully it goes smoothly and see what happens.
Cam Waters into the Inferno. We'll head back to Bryan.
Once again, that was Trey Lyle's interview with my man, Mr. Cam Waters. Let's dive on into what is still hot.
What's still hot? It's time to upgrade you on the latest news in NASCAR.
We're going to bring the program my co-host for this evening. He is our content director in the NASCAR side of things, Stephen Stumpf, at Stephen_Stumpf. Stephen, what's going on, my friend? How you doing, bud?
I'm doing all right. Obviously, day after you get back from the race, pretty exhausting, but, Darlington was an amazing race. We got North Wilkesboro, the option tire coming up, and we got the Coca-Cola 600 in less than 2 weeks. So exciting slate ahead, and I'm ready for all of it.
Yeah, Steven, I feel like NASCAR has been on a roll lately. I mean, last week at Kansas, or should I say 2 weeks ago at Kansas was amazing. Darlington was fantastic. I feel like we got to get through North Wilkesboro, and then we got Charlotte, which is also, the past 2 years, been incredible. Got to get through North Wilkesboro. I feel like that's going to be the big one. But you mentioned Charlotte, the Coke 600. On the other side of things, with the Indianapolis 500, it was announced, NBC announcing that Jimmy Johnson, 7-time NASCAR champion, is going to be joining the NBC Sports telecast for 4 races, including the Indianapolis 500. I do like this move, Stephen, because it feels like they're bringing back a little bit of personality. Obviously, they lose Dale Jr., but he's going to be joining them for Daytona, Talladega, as well as Phoenix, and then obviously the Indianapolis 500. I love this move. What was your thoughts on this? And then were you a little surprised by this announcement?
So I'm not too surprised, just because, ever since they kind of started the all drivers broadcast, it's been like, I think the better question is who hasn't taken a turn in the booth, whether it be for an Xfinity race or a truck race or so on, or who hasn't gone to the booth after retiring full time. But I like this for a couple of reasons. First of all, obviously Johnson needs no introduction. I'm going to be very excited to see how he does, especially as an analyst for Daytona and Talladega. But I really like the idea of bringing on for the Indy 500, and here's why. He's one of the few people that have run in both the Indy 500 and NASCAR. And guess who's also doing the double that weekend? It's Kyle Larson. So I think Jimmy's gonna be very helpful, especially since there's gonna be so many eyes on Larson for this race, and he'll probably have an idea of what it's like to, even though Jimmy hasn't done the double himself, he'll have a great idea of what it's like to run in both these cars and so on. And also, what Kyle will be looking for, being so used to stock cars and everything else, and what he'd be trying to look for, and kind of the process of getting up to speed in IndyCar there. So I'm very excited to see how he does there. I think also it'll be, again, just, it'll be his debut in the booth. And so I think it's going to be, very good thing. So excited for that to happen as well.
Yeah, I'm very excited for that to happen, Stephen. I feel like he's going to bring a different side of things, and I'm excited to see what he will bring to the table. Another one that I'm going to be excited to see brought to the table, that is what we're going to see from Amazon in 2025. It was announced that Atlanta Motor Speedway, they're going to be hosting the first round of the opening race of the first round of the playoffs this year, but next year they're going to go back to their original slot they had last year, and which is mid-June. They're going to be the first race for the 5 races of TNT. Do you like this move, Stephen? Obviously, it's rumored Daytona is going to be the cutoff race as well. That's going to return it back to its regular position in the schedule. Darlington is currently this year due to the Olympic coverage. I mean, we're circling here because one thing leads to another, leads to another, leads to another. Anyway, it looks like Atlanta is going to be the first race for the 5 races for TNT. Is this a good move?
I think so for a couple of reasons. Well, first of all, just, this implies that Atlanta, which is in the playoffs for the first time, in its current configuration, it's going to be back out of it. It's probably going to be the spring and then, late and then midsummer. I like it just for the fact that I'm not really a fan of having both Atlanta and Talladega in the playoffs. But at the same time, especially after the finish we saw with Suarez in the 3 wide there and how fun, this February was, I think Atlanta is the perfect hook, the perfect, first race for TNT to get people acclimated to watching it and so on. Because like, if that race next year is anything like we've seen this year, buckle up, get ready, because then that's gonna be the perfect lead in. But also something I found interesting is that because of, Sunday being, the perfect ratings time, almost all the night races last year were on Sundays. But this year Atlanta's going to Saturday night, which I find very shocking, just because, it's a complete reversal of what we've seen before. The only Saturday night races this year are Daytona in August and the Bristol night race, which, are pretty much tradition. So I'm excited to have a Saturday night race again, though. And so I think it's going to, be very fun to watch that as well. And, just see in terms of just rating wise, how that plays out as well.
I'm excited to see it as well, Steven. I feel like we don't get many Saturday night races, and so I'm looking forward to seeing what we're actually going to have a under the lights Saturday race instead of like a Sunday night race that we're used to seeing. Last but not least, we're going to be joined by some Aussie invasions at North Wilkesboro at Sonoma. I'm thinking too much this weekend, not in a couple weeks. But Will Brown, he's going to be racing with RCR in Sonoma. It was announced that the V8 racer is going to be joining Richard Childress Racing for the Cup Series race in June. This comes after a plethora of sports cars veterans coming into NASCAR. We've seen Cam Waters. He's going to be joining the number 60 team for Stage 60 and RFK. Shane Van Gisbergen's also been running full-time in the Xfinity Series. And then last year we saw Brody Kostecki as well. It feels like more and more of these supercar racers are going to be entering. I think this is a fantastic move.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And if you think about, in terms of broadening their horizon, I mean, just Shane winning at Chicago last year was just huge, not only for, NASCAR in the US, but also globally. But having, this many drivers from, Australia, New Zealand, that part of the world, it's going to be really fun to watch them. And I imagine it'll be a very huge draw, in that part of the world. And I imagine it'll probably be like, live network TV. I don't exactly know how TV works in Australia, New Zealand, but it'll definitely be a big show. And just with all the road courses and road racing, on the calendar currently, I think it's great. And it's just great to broaden the horizons. And it is kind of interesting how now we kind of have the Supercars invasion, where all the drivers from the Australian Supercar series are coming over. And if we think it back to like the late 2000s, it was kind of the open wheel invasion. With the exception of Ambrose, we had Sam Hornish Jr., Dario Franchitti, Juan Pablo Montoya, to name a bunch of other names, that had come through the NASCAR ranks during that time. So it's kind of interesting to kind of see that process again, but with a completely different series and a completely different car.
Steven, let's dive on into our soundbite of the week.
Well, Tony, what angered you at the end of the race? What did you take issue with?
What the hell do you think I was mad about? Dumb little runs us clear down to the infield. He wants to about everybody else, and he's the one that drives like a little. I'm gonna bust his ass.
Thanks, Tony.
Thank you.
And short track races.
It's time for the Soundbites of the week.
What was going on there with you and Reddick in the battle for the lead right there?
Clean race until it wasn't. They got side by side and got checked up, and we got by completely clean, and was trying to take care of stuff, but run hard, and just went for a move there that just was never going to happen. I just don't. Yeah, it wiped us both out. I mean, it hit us hard enough where we wheel hopped into the fence. It's not just a door-to-door contact and a little push and shove. It's just ruined both of our days. I don't. Really frustrated by that. Really pissed off about it. I just don't. I don't get it. We've been able to race clean for how long, and to take our group, this for the third bank, number 17 team, out of contention for a trophy for another week, to miss out on it, it's starting to hurt.
This is the second week in a row you've been hit by a driver racing for the lead. Is that going to change how you race drivers from going forward?
Yeah, man, about has to. We keep getting run into without hitting somebody else first. I guess if that's the way we got to go about it, then that's it. Last week someone had a run on us and was going to try and cover it and tried to slide up and take it and realized it wasn't going to work and left the lane. And you know what? No one hit anything until the front stretch, and then we still got slammed in the door there. So I just at least we both made it to the line there. This one here, just to ruin both of our day on something like that.
Once again, that was Chris Buescher after the race. Stephen, I don't think I have ever seen Chris Buescher that angry before. Have you? And then were you surprised he was this angry?
So I'm not surprised that he was angry, but I'm surprised that he was this angry, if that makes any sense.
That's fair.
Because to that point, you know, in my years of covering it, I've never when have we seen Chris Buescher ever do something like that before? We haven't. And, you know, since I was there at Darlington that weekend, just I'll kind of go through my part of it. Larson wrecked out. I was at the care center. I saw that, you know, just watching through the wall that Buescher had got to the lead. And then right when I got back to the media center, I was getting ready to go to the grid. Then I suddenly I look at the pylon and I see the 6s out front. And then the 30, the 17, the 45 are completely gone. And I'm like, what the heck happened? But then obviously, you know, as I get there, I found out there was contact. They both got flat tires. I was positioned right outside, you know, Reddick and Buescher's cars. They parked, you know, sort of close to each other. And then everyone in an instant just sprinted over because Buescher just completely ran over and kind of caught us all by surprise. And I'm sure you guys have all seen the clips before and everything that's happened there. But I think part of the reason why Buescher was as mad as he was is because think about last week when he lost in the closest finish in Cup Series history to Larson. And he in both races, Kansas and Darlington, he ran clean only to get, you know, kind of, you know, doored, bumped out of the way and bumped out of the way. Obviously, I think Kansas is different because they both made it to the finish, but Darlington, obviously, they did not. But among the things that Chris said, you know, they don't have a win yet. They've been very close, and now they're not safe like they were last year. They're only 15 points above the playoff cut line, and we're half of the way through the regular season. So I think Ford's getting better, and I think they'll ultimately be fine. But I completely understand his frustration there just because of how much that win meant. And as for Reddick, I mean, to his credit, he was very apologetic, both to Chris and, you know, to the media, saying that he was too aggressive, shouldn't have made that move. And I think for him, I think it's just a matter of he had the much faster car. He had the fastest car of the day. He led almost 2/3 of the race, won the pole, and so on. And he caught right back to, you know, Chris, you know, but with about 10 to go. And had he been patient, I think he ultimately would have gotten by him. But he pushed the issue a little too much. They both went out of the race, and that's why Chris ended up being as mad as he was. So I think you know, I think ultimately, like, I think both of them will be fine after this, but definitely, I think it was definitely, you know, a moment that none of us expected to happen.
Stephen, let's dive on into the checkered flag and wrap it up, my man.
It's going to be a drag race all the way back to the start-finish line. No caution. They're side by side, right to the line. Big crash. Here they come. Checkered flag.
The checkered flag is out, and it's time for the final thoughts.
Our final thought segment is in the air. Whatever you want to rant, rave, or anything in between. Stephen Stumpf, the floor is yours, my man.
I'll mainly talk about the All-Star race since, you know, technically it's an off week in terms of the, you know, the championship. I'm not anxious. What am I saying? I'm very excited to see how the option tires work out for the All-Star race, because the next gen car, it's had these issues on short tracks. I mean, I think there's a pretty obvious answer, or at least a pretty obvious thing to try, but we're not trying it. So, but if we're not going to, I think that, you know, working with the tires is probably the second best thing we can do. We saw how Bristol, by complete accident with the tire wear, ended up being a fantastic race. I hope the strategy and mixing that up can make North Wilkesboro great too. And, you know, if it doesn't work, then hey, at least we tried. But if it does work, you know, and it's fantastic, then maybe it's something that we found, you know, that can, you know, help not just short tracks, but other tracks on the schedule as well. And while it's ultimately a Band-Aid fix, you know, I'd rather have good racing with, you know, all these different tire options than have not so good racing with the same tire. And the other thing I do want to talk about the All-Star race is, for the life of me, I don't understand why Shane Van Gisbergen is not in it. Like, Guy shocked everyone, winning his Cup debut at Chicago last year, something that no one had done in over 60 years, and yet he doesn't have a car to race. And obviously, you know, because the option tire, because North Wilkesboro is not on the Cup schedule or the Xfinity schedule, you can say that doesn't matter. But I mean, come on, just the way he won, I think it's going to be very disappointing to not see him out there with everyone else.
For me, I'm going to go out and just say that we just need to get through this weekend. We've had such fantastic racing from the finishes at Kansas and Atlanta, from the racing at Kansas and Darlington. Just great racing from Bristol to Atlanta. Obviously, fuel mileage saving at Daytona and Talladega weren't fun. They were still interesting all the way up to the very end. The short tracks have been a struggle, though, and for North Wilkesboro, it was not a good race to watch the past year. This year, hopefully it's a lot different with the new repave. I want to caution people. I don't think it's going to be as bad or even as good as people think. I think it's going to be somewhere in the middle. All I'm saying is we get through this weekend, we're going to have one hell of a race at Charlotte coming up, and we'll see if Kyle Larson can do the double. Once again, Stephen Stumpf at Stephen_Stumpf. What are you going to be cooking up on frontstretch.com? And then where are we going to be seeing you at a racetrack soon, my friend?
You'll see me next to the Coca-Cola 600. We'll have Anthony and Chase provide coverage at North Wilkesboro. But I think my next major thing I'll be cooking up is, in fact, for the 600, because the next gen, okay, say what you will about the next gen car, but it's made the 1.5 mile tracks incredible. And the Coke 600's gone from somewhat of an afterthought of a crown jewel to one of the best tickets, one of the best events on the schedule year in and year out now. And this year is not going to disappoint either. But at the same time, this is 600 miles, 400 laps. So much of the race and the prestige comes from it being a marathon. And I don't like the way that it's split into 4 stages of 100 laps. I think you could turn a great race into an even better one if you just tweak that a little bit. And that is what I will be writing about next week. Stay tuned.
Once again, frontstretch.com has all the latest for you. Coming up next on the Front Stretch Podcast Network, Through the Gears, my man Tino's got all the latest betting odds for the All-Star Open as well as the All-Star Race. And once again, Stock Car Scoop every single Sunday on the Front Stretch Podcast Network. Stephen Stumpf, I am Brian Nolen. Thank you so much. Talk to you next week.
Stephen Stumpf of frontstretch.com here. Come back for more great racing videos, and if you like us, don't forget to hit that subscribe button.